So let's go ahead and look at what that data set looks like again. And we're going to talk about normalization. Normalization is where all we're going to do is try and normalize these stock prices so that they all start at the same value. We can compare them. So if we look here, Tesla has a price of about $5.60 at the beginning of this sample. Google has a price of about $330. If Google were to go up by $10, it wouldn't be that big of a change, but if Tesla went up by $10, it'd be a huge change. We want to start all of these values at some number so that they can be compared against each other. A $10 change in one is very different than a $10 change in another right now, and we don't want that to be the case. For comparison reasons, if we normalize our stock data, we can compare across observations. So let's consider how we can normalize our prices. We're going to create a function to do so, and what it is going to do is we're going to normalize each stock price by its initial price. So in other words, the very first observation in all of these is going to be a value of 1. Every price after that is going to be a ratio or in relationship to that initial stock price. So let's go ahead and create this and we'll see what it is we're doing. We are going to define another function. We're going to call this one normalize, and all we're going to pass in this time is a simple data set. So we're just going to call it df, set our colon, enter with that indentation, and what we're going to do here is just make a copy of that initial data set. So we're just going to call it x. So df.copy equals x. We're going to make some changes to x, and we're going to keep that df unchanged just in case we needed it later on. Now within our function, we're going to use a for loop. For I in x.columns 1 through the end, so in other words, skipping column 0 or skipping the date. So again, this reads, for each observation in the columns of this data frame, excluding date, we're going to do something. We have another colon. This is how we set up our for loops before. Then we're going to have this line of code, what it is we're going to do. What we're going to do is we're going to say, for each value in a column, we're going to set it equal to the value over the initial value, the value in that column of 0. So I'm going to scroll up here and say what we're doing with some actual visual data. Let's look at Apple. What we're doing is we're saying, let's pick a random one. Let's pick 3. We're saying create this value and set it equal to this value over the initial value. And we're going to do this for every single row in our data set. Take any row you're talking about, 2,196, and divide it by the initial value. So all these prices are going to be relative to the starting price for each individual stock. In fact, we're even going to do this to row 0, where hopefully all of our values, if we wrote it correctly, will be equal to 1. It's going to be this price over this price, so any number divided by itself is a 1. So going through this again, that's what we're doing. We're going to say for each column, take each value, set it equal to that value over that stock's value in observation 0. Then we're going to return or retain that set of new information. We can run this. Again, it's a function, so we've defined it. We haven't actually pulled this function into our code yet. So we're going to say normalize. We're going to call our function. We're going to pass in stocks underscore df. And it's exactly what we've accomplished, what we hoped to. All these prices are now normalized. They start at the same value. They all start at 1. We can read these now and compare it against each other. Relative to their starting price, how have these stocks performed? Well, Apple's up about 9 times. Let's see. Tesla's up about 76 times. SPY, or the S&P 500, is up about 3 times. So now we have a comparison. We can see how have all these performed relative to each other. In fact, IBM's actually gone down in price. So that brings us to problem 2. Graph normalized or scaled stock prices using a function. So go ahead and try this and then we'll move on.